Welcome to the Colts Squad Show. I'm your host, Derek Schultz, and I think we're about to discuss the Colts position that will have the most changes this offseason.
And I'm Zach Hicks, and while every single one of my sports teams stinks right now, at least we all have Indiana football to root for coming up here in a couple days.
I'm Alan Pinkett, former Oiler, and today we're going to talk about my favorite subject, defense. Not.
Colts Nation, rise up. It's the Colts Squad. Everything Indianapolis Colts every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Circle City, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to squad up. The Colts Squad Show starts now.
Welcome into another edition of the Colts Squad Show. I'm Derek Schultz, longtime Indy sports talker and columnist for the Indianapolis Business Journal. I am joined by a Notre Dame legend, longtime NFL running back, very successful career in the 80s and 90s, and Alan Pinkett, and everybody's favorite film buff, Zach Hicks. One half of your Locked On Colts daily duo is here too. Our guy Jake Arthur will rejoin us later this week as we make it a full squad once again. But guys, now that we're into the Colts offseason, we will start with our series of position group reviews on our Tuesday show. We'll begin with the defensive line today. Year in review for the D-line. Very interesting year for the line. And obviously, I don't need to tell everybody else a critical position for the Colts. Some ups, some downs. We'll grade them. We'll talk about how the forecast looks for some potential changes coming up here, especially with a couple of key players with their contracts about to expire here in a couple of weeks, and changes to expect from the defensive line room coming up here in 2026. And then we'll laser focus in on Laiatu Latu. Outside of probably the Colts quarterback position, he may have been the player most talked about throughout this year, and certainly one of the most under the microscope, right, as a former first-round pick and now going to be entering year three. And while we did see some growth from Latu, maybe not at the pace that some folks would like for a guy that was the first defensive player taken off the board in the 2023 draft, but we'll talk about that coming up. And then some news and notes as well, which is kind of what we'll try to do in the offseason portion of the show as little bits sort of sprinkle in during the middle of the week. It's a little bit quiet right now for the Colts. Obviously, the playoffs are going on for everybody else. Coaching changes are going on for everybody else. And it's been a little bit of a ho-hum week, but we'll touch on some of those.
We have a lot of CFL signings to talk about. Obviously, I hope Alan's been doing his research on these guys.
Yeah, we're just gonna throw Alan on the spot and just have him break down each one of those guys. But fellas, let's start with this defensive line, and we want to try to bring some nuance to this conversation. Really, any conversation that we have on the show. I know sometimes with the post-game shows, particularly, we are emotional and that something just happened and we're trying to kind of react in the moment. The beauty of the offseason shows is that you can just kind of take a deep breath, right? And sort of look at the entire body of work, the 17-game sample size. That said, Zach, some good, some bad with the defensive line, but I think overall, most people would feel like they were left wanting more out of that position group from the 2025 performance.
Yeah, I think it's something that they just need to find a way to win better with four, which actually, if you look at a lot of the advanced numbers, they had a better pressure percentage when rushing four than with blitzing for most of the season. But I don't know, it didn't really pass the sniff test. I think a lot of their four-man pressures came on late pressures, like 3+ second drop back pressures, to where it's like, sure, you're getting pressures at like that 3-second mark, but by then, like, the quarterback has so many options because you're leaving these defenders in coverage for so long. The Colts just really struggled to get quick pressures up front when rushing four guys, and that's such an asset to have as a defensive team on calling defensive plays. Look at the Houston Texans, for instance. I know they're a tough team to compare to because we're talking about like an all-time great defense over there, but they have the beauty of they don't have to sim pressure. They don't have to bring these blitzes. They don't have to do anything creative. They can just rush four and get home because they have these dogs up front that can win so quick. And that's something the Colts really lacked. It's not that you need to be like the Texans and have two guys that can win super quick in the defensive line when it comes to rushing the passer. If you can just have one guy who can do that, that is a huge boost to your defense. And the Colts just didn't really have that high-end guy. And then if you don't have that high-end guy, you want to win with the sum of your parts. And the sum of your parts just wasn't good enough for the Colts. They had some good moments. They had some flashes. They had some guys who had better years this year. But I think by and large, a lot of the Colts betting on like these veterans up front to really produce in the pass rushing department, even the run defending department as well, it just didn't pay dividends for them. So they have some talent. They have some guys coming back who have done some good things, like Laiatu Latu, like Adetomiwa Adebore, like Grover Stewart. Hopefully DeForest Buckner can regain some of his dominance from, when he was healthy earlier this past season, coming off that neck surgery. And then if you can revamp what's around those guys, you can find some good pieces. But a lot of the Colts betting on some veteran guys to get back to places that they probably couldn't physically get back to really bit them in the butt this past season.
Well, when I look at this defense, I use both eye test and stats. And the eye test to me was one where they were like a bend but don't break type of defense. They may give up a few yards, but they would keep people out of the end zone. And the stats sort of bear that out. But there were a couple stats that really stuck out to me. You talk about getting pressure on the pass. The Colts had 29 sacks. And you usually depend on your front four to get a majority of those sacks. And Laiatu Latu had 8.5. He led the team in sacks. But then you look at the Denver Broncos; they had 68 sacks as a team.
They're pretty darn good over there in Denver.
and you wonder how the hell did they become the number one seed in the AFC? Well, the sacks, may be a thing. I also look at tackles for loss. The Colts were 18th in the league. That's not bad. That's just right in the middle, 83 tackles for loss. And you really can't use that stat too much because who had the most tackles for loss? Cleveland Browns. How many games did they win? So the stats tell you some things and they don't tell you a lot. The thing I'm concerned about, though, is, the Colts gave up 372 first downs. Colts offense had 352. But to me, that falls in line with that bend but don't break type of mentality. They didn't give up that many points. Colts gave up 5,947 yards. The offense had 5,880. Again, that bend but don't break. I've tried to do a teeny bit of research before this, and I did see one article written by I guess someone from Sports Illustrated, other than Jake, that said that the biggest area that needs improvement for the Colts is defensive line. But Zach, I listened to you name off some of these names of guys that had good years, and I'm like, well, hell yeah, those guys did pretty good. So I guess defense as a whole needs more depth. But in the area of pressures, I think the Colts could stand to try to get more pressure on the quarterback with their front four. And it was just unfortunate that they lost to DeForest Buckner because he was having a great year. But I understand that he's up for a contract this year, or maybe next year is the last year on his contract. And he's 32 years old, although we see guys play into their not late 30s, but mid 30s. So, the thing that happens when you get older in the NFL, you get smarter, your athleticism will wane a little bit, but having that noggin and being smart can help you make a lot of plays too. But overall, I would like to see the defense, if the one area of improvement they need is getting more pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, and just real quick, just to build off that bend don't break style of the defense, because this has kind of been something that I've been kind of studying a lot this offseason. The Colts schematically were not bend don't break. They didn't want to be bend don't break last year. They played a lot of man coverage, simmed a lot of pressures, brought pressure. We saw outside of Laiatu Latu, like some of these guys with like 3, 4, 5 sacks were like defensive linebackers and defensive backs. Nick Cross, I think, had like 3 sacks this season. Yep. Cameron Bynum had a couple sacks this year. They wanted to be this havoc-wreaking defense, but because they couldn't win quickly up front in the pass rushing department with 4 guys, I mean, if you're going to take 3 seconds to get to the quarterback, you're going to break. You're going to break in terms of allowing first downs and allowing teams to get in the red zone. And you can be as creative as you want to keep them off the board, but you do need game-breaking players or just guys who can win quickly to get off the football field. So I don't think like Gus Bradley, Matt Eberflus, they wanted to be bend don't break. Lou Anarumo does not want to be bend don't break. I think Jake and some other beat guys have asked him about that. And he's been like, we don't want to be that. We want to create opportunities. It's just we weren't able to make it happen this year. So I think the defensive line, and Jake, I know you agree with this, just getting more talent around Buckner, Latu, Adetomiwa, if you want to throw him in there, getting more talent that can win quickly around those guys can help them be more havoc creating than being bend don't break next season.
Yeah, I quickly learned a lesson not to present the idea of bend but don't break to Lou, because I think we asked Gus about it and he was like, yeah, that's probably about right. And I asked Lou about it because they were giving up a bunch of yards but not very many points, and they were getting some big plays, and that kind of is an amalgamation of what it is to be bend but don't break. And he was like, well, we certainly don't want to try and be that at all. I reject that, essentially.
Yeah.
So yeah, like nothing about his play calling or schematics, like you said, really is an indication they want to be that way. But no, this defensive line was just so interesting. I don't know how you finish so high against the run without DeForest Buckner for like half the year. It's unfortunate they didn't get the timing of this right. Because this was, I think, the best the interior has looked outside of Buckner as a whole for quite some time. But, on the outside, it didn't complement it well enough. I think we're all looking forward to these combo rushes of second-year Laiatu Latu with DeForest Buckner and that wreaking havoc on offenses, and that just didn't really come to fruition. And then you had Samson Ebukam as like your third rusher, Tyquan Lewis as well. So you're relying on 30-plus-year-old guys with injury histories to be your primary second wave of pass rushers. But the problem was your first wave wasn't good enough either. So like you guys said, you were really relying on these key blitzes from Nick Cross, Kenny Moore, Mike Hilton for the couple weeks that he was in there, Cam Bynum, like Zaire Franklin. If it weren't for the extra blitzes from the other guys from the defensive backfield in the front seven, they would have been a whole lot worse for wear. I mean, that is honestly what hurried up the quarterbacks more often than not in a lot of situations was, oh, here comes the safety screaming unblocked off the edge. It took too long for guys to get off of their blocks. You see the future with Latu. He's got some counters and things like that, but overall, these guys just do not get off their blocks quickly whatsoever. And I think a guy like Kwity Paye kind of gets has gotten a pass for some reason. Maybe it's because we all assume he's just out the door in free agency, but I don't think anyone has talked enough about how Kwity Paye completely disappeared in this whole thing. Like, this was probably the healthiest he's been through a season, or the least amount of time he's missed, but statistically it was probably his worst year. And when they really needed someone to step up and complement Laiatu Latu on the other end, and of course with Buckner out. But yeah, this is a group that needs an overhaul in the worst way, because we've seen everything they have to offer. The only ascending players on there is Latu. Tommy did great, but that was like your third 3-tech for the most part when all your guys are healthy. And then we don't know what JT Tuimoloau is yet, but he's not enough to really count on him being a guy that you're not trying to replace snaps with right now. So yeah, this whole defensive front seven needs an overhaul. The line just was not good enough.
Yeah, you don't want to settle into this situation where, I have a buddy that calls it Yannick Ngakweism, where it looks good on paper, but then you watch the game and you're like, is this it?
Right.
And it just feels like, for every one of those pressures where Latu didn't get home and you say, okay, well, the sack number doesn't really reflect it. I mean, I remember the week 17 game against Jacksonville where essentially Trevor Lawrence tripped slightly before the line of scrimmage. And I think Latu was the closest guy, so they gave him a sack. And it's kind of like, you get some of that comes out in the wash, right? And it's just one of those position groups that it wasn't bad. It just wasn't good enough. And I think that's kind of the overarching problem with the Colts in general. When you're an 8-9, 9-8 football team, you just have a lot of areas where you're fine, but fine isn't good enough. Fine isn't going to get you to the Super Bowl. Fine isn't going to get you to where Houston's defense is. And I think that's the issue that they keep running into, Zach.
Yeah, I'll say this real quick because I know we got to get to our next segment, but it's not the worst defensive line they've had in the Chris Ballard era. Like,
Not at all.
honestly, is it even bottom 3? Probably not, because the interior defensive line depth was pretty good this year, but that shouldn't be the standard. The standard should be above average. The standard should be great even, so your standard can't be like, well, it's not our worst, like below average, and I appreciate, for all the hate we're giving Chris Ballard this offseason, I appreciate him being so upfront and candid in his end season presser, talking about how we need to get younger and faster and how they need to add more juice to the defensive line, because that's certainly a direction they need to go in this offseason.
Will the Colts defensive line, like the David Bowie song, see some changes? We'll talk about that, and I'll limit the singing when the squad show returns next. This portion of the Colts Squad Show brought to you by our friends at Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire somebody for this show, which I don't because everyone on here is awesome and handsome, but if I did, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword, right? Don't struggle to find candidates or get your posting seen. Use Indeed to expedite the process for you and make it fast, painless, easy. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of the show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Sports of the show brought to you also by our friends at Kyo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think that there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo. The smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. I love how simple Quo makes everything. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed, and every person sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. Drives me crazy on other platforms when that stuff gets hidden on calls. It's no surprise that Quo, therefore, is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNFL. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNFL. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. And we're back on the Locked On Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for joining us alongside the Locked On Colts duo of Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks and former NFL running back Alan Pinkett. I'm Derek Schultz. We're talking about the Colts defensive line. Our year in review, first position review starts with the D-line. And guys, I think we are going to see a lot of changes simply because of the contract situation. Alan, I know you had mentioned DeForest Buckner now. He's still got a year left on his deal, but a lot of these other guys don't. Kwity Paye, Samson Ebukam, Tyquan Lewis, Neville Gallimore, Eric Johnson, all free agents. There's, I guess, also a chance, Grover Stewart, we had talked about potentially as, who knows, a cut candidate. I don't know. We'll see what happens there. Chris Ballard maybe changing his stripes a little bit on that. Also, the Trey Hendrickson flirtation, and will they pursue him this offseason? Will they bring in somebody else? There's the draft to talk about as well, even though they don't have a first-round pick. So ideally, you want to be able to get one of those game-changing edges, at least as far as the prospects are concerned. But Zach, I don't think there's any doubt that there are going to be changes in this personnel group for sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, when Chris Ballard, you can say a lot of things about this guy, but Chris Ballard is typically honest with us in his end-of-season presser, almost too much for fans, how talks about the same frustrations and all this that we have. But usually when he discusses an upcoming free agent or discusses a position group to address or like a priority for them in an offseason, it is something that becomes a priority. I remember last year at his end-of-the-season presser, he talked about wanting to finish the deal in free agency, and he comes out spending like a madman for the first time ever in his tenure. So he has typically been pretty good at living up to his own promises in those end of season pressers. And he mentioned wanting to get younger and faster. In particular, mentioned about getting more juice on that defensive line. And he has this rare opportunity where, again, like you said, Derek, 5 of those guys' contracts are up. And there's really not an incentive outside of maybe Neville Gallimore, who I think was a fun player this year, and you can get him back for fairly cheap. I think you can let a lot of those guys go, especially on the edge. And there is a pretty decent free agent crop of edge rushers hitting out there. Like, these guys obviously have their flaws. If you're hitting free agency, you're not some perfect player in this league. Trey Hendrickson being among one of those guys there, Derek, who might be hitting. But you know, when Ballard talked about wanting to get younger and faster, it kind of pushed me away from Hendrickson a little bit, where it's like, we've tried this veteran route. We tried Ebukam this year, who was 30 coming off an injury plague season the year before. We've tried with, Tyquan Lewis, who's dealt with all these injuries, who's over 30 years old. We tried with all these older guys. Let's get some younger, faster guys in here. I'm not saying you just draft one in every single round because, gosh, I mean, he spent so much draft capital on the position and he has not found anything in the draft. I mean, if you talk about picks that he has spent on pass rushers in his time with the Colts, the 13th overall pick to trade for DeForest Buckner, the 15th overall pick with Laiatu Latu, 21st overall pick with Kwity Paye, and then other guys in the top 100 from Terrell Basham to Kamoko Toure, Tyquan Lewis, Dayo Adangbo, Kwity Paye, Ben Banogu. Like, none of these guys have really worked out for the Colts in the way they wanted. I mean, jury's still out on Latu, and Buckner's been great, but like, it's a tough time for him right now. So I think going at it in free agency, there's a handful of guys coming off their rookie contracts who might not get renewed with their teams. I'm looking at a guy in Atlanta like Arnold Ebiketie, who had a very solid season down there, and they have 2 rookie pass rushers that are off the edge, so he's probably the odd man out. That guy is a guy who's faster, who's younger, who adds more juice off the edge, and makes sense for this team. So it's about finding the guys who fit your culture, fit what you want to bring in here, fit the mindset you want to bring going forward. And I think for this Colts team, again, it's just getting faster off the edge. It's getting quicker and more explosive off the edge. Having a 30-year-old pass rusher, albeit he was a great athlete before the Achilles tear, but a 30-year-old pass rusher coming off an Achilles tear was never going to lead to quick pressures for your defense. Tyquan Lewis, love the guy. Good run defender, good rotational guy. He's never going to get you quick pressures off the edge. With this defensive system, if you want to play as much man coverage that Lou Anarumo wants to play, you need guys who can win quickly. You can't leave guys in man coverage for more than 2.5 seconds. Like, you could have the best corners in football, and they're going to get beat in man coverage if you leave them out there on an island. You need to have pass rushers that can win quickly and can disrupt the passer. And I think that's going to be the main thing this offseason. Let 4 or 5 of those guys go who are hitting the market and just revamp this edge rush room. Hopefully JT Tuimoloau has a good offseason, cuts some weight, and comes in a little bit faster. And you can have a really quick edge room that maybe it's not the best one in the league, but like, if it's quick and disruptive, that's what we're looking for going into next season.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest way for Chris Ballard to not have to do the part where he hurts feelings and outright cuts guys. Like, if you just let guys walk, then that kind of gives him his out that he probably needs. But yeah, I mean, Tyquan is a guy I could see them re-signing just because he's like a lifetime Colt, and they'll just keep giving him, 1-year deals as long as he's available to play. But other than that, Neville Gallimore is probably the only one I would bring back. I'm looking here. He was their 3rd best graded pass rusher last year behind only Latu and Buckner. And that really stood out. And I know we had our reservations about him as a run defender. I didn't think he was all that bad. I mean, it was a pleasant surprise. I didn't think he was a detriment. We've certainly seen the Colts backup D tackles get run all over whenever Buckner and or Grover Stewart leave the field before. So Gallimore is definitely a guy who I probably don't want him starting, but being that main tackle to come onto the field next after those first 2, that's the way to go. Now, as far as Grover Stewart, we know DeForest is planning to play this year, so Grover is kind of that next piece. Zach, if you let Grover walk, what's the next best option? Because you're not going to just go find a Grover out there. And I mean, he's a big dude. He's a true nose tackle, but I feel like he is still very rangy and like will run a play down 20, 30 yards downfield. So when we talk about getting younger and faster and stuff, I don't know that Grover necessarily gets dropped into that bucket because I think he is still above average in those areas.
Yeah.
That is one guy I don't think I'm really willing to have them cut his salary. Like if they rework a deal or something, that's cool, but I don't think you can get rid of Grover.
Yeah, I mean, it really would come down to we feel like we can get this guy in here. We just need the extra cap. And is Grover that much better than like a $2 million a year nose tackle that we can get on the market? That would be the business debate you'd have internally. But outside of that, like Grover is a staple in the locker room, a very, very good football player. It's hard to find someone as good as him. I don't think they're going to touch that contract, but it's just something on the table, I think. But yeah, when they get younger and faster up front, I don't think they mean Grover and DeForest. I think they mean Ebukam and Taekwon Lewis, and even maybe Kwity Paye to a degree. I know he's not old, but he's been here for so long and been ineffective. I think that's what they mean more at the edge rush room. I think on the interior, they're fine with those older guys starting, maybe getting another defensive tackle to rotate in. But I think they more so mean at the edge position because that's where they were old and slow this past season.
And linebacker.
Yeah.
You know, and when Ballard says younger and faster, when I think of young, I think he's going to draft some stuff. But the youngest ones on the team, Tim Smith and Terrell and Chami, I mean, they couldn't even get on the active rush. That's your youth right there, besides Latu. But you know, there's a fine dance in between having experience and guys who are used to battling in the trenches and getting that young, enthusiastic, exuberant player who's just going to run around with their hair on fire. So you got to sort of balance it out. So I think it just makes for an interesting offseason because, as you mentioned, with no first-round draft picks, usually you find that person in the first round that's going to be a game wrecker on the defensive line. You don't find them in the third or fourth round. They're usually gone, and they're gone before running backs now. I can say that. But it'll be, you know, getting younger and faster is going to be quite the challenge for this team.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to find a Danielle Hunter impact player. Like, unless you are so convinced on Trey Hendrickson's medicals and he's just like, Lou, I only want to play for you and nobody else. And he comes here. Like, outside of that, you're not going to get that game-breaking pass rusher. You need Laiatu Latu to step into that role next season, or DeForest Buckner to get healthy, or in the perfect world, both of those guys to have that happen. But I think you can be a sum of your parts type of pass rush. It's just you have to have the right parts to do it. Like again, go out there and get 2 free agents in here. And Chris Ballard's a really good scout of free agents. He's always been good at it. Like, he doesn't miss much in free agency, like from low contracts to middling contracts. Like, outside of the Matt Gay contract, he doesn't really miss much on the free agent market. It's just he doesn't use it enough, you know, until this past year. He really hasn't used it. So just really identify like 3 to 4 pass rushers that are going to hit the market that you think can fit Lou Anarumo in this system, and get 1 or 2 of those guys in here. And if you have to feel like you need to draft another guy too, like, sure. But I just think it's about replacing those guys that are leaving with younger, faster guys that fit this system. And I think that's very doable in this free agent class, even though it's not a great free agent class. But you just have to have the wherewithal to do it for sure.
Is there anybody else to use? Zach, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but anybody that you've seen that you know is a free agent that schematically might fit and is in more of that, you know, 27, 28 range than the 31, 32 range like Hendrickson and some of the older vets?
Yeah, I like to look at the guys who are coming off that 4-year rookie contract, because even with the COVID years and stuff mixed in, they're at most 27 years old. They could be 25, 26 even in some cases. Joseph Asai, who actually played under Lou Anarumo in Cincinnati, re-signed there this past year for a year. He's still only 25 years old, despite being in the NFL for 5 seasons. Wow. But he's been a player who's got 10 sacks over the last 2 years. He's been a productive rotational pass rusher inside and out, doing some good things there. Boy Mafe up in Seattle's kind of fallen out of the rotation because of some of their other younger players they've thrown in there, and they signed DeMarcus Lawrence this past season. So getting like a Boy Mafe and just saying like, hey, here's your shot to regain some of that stride you had earlier in your career. And yeah, like, again, it doesn't have to be this perfect find where it's like, this guy had 20 sacks last year, let's get him in here. Obviously, it can be a guy that's like, hey, he was taken round 2, round 3, needs a change of scenery, get him in here, give him some more leeway, and just unleash him. And sometimes that's good for these players. So yeah, find a guy where you saw the flashes and you think he can fit what Lou wants, and just let him go from there.
Jalen Phillips, if you're looking for a little more pop.
That's your splash right there. If you go for Jalen Phillips, that's your splash for sure. But yeah, it can come in either form, splash or like a little drop in the puddle, like either one, as long as it works with this defense. There were too many times last year where it was like the puzzle piece is not fitting with what Lou wanted and what Ballard wanted, and the puzzle just wasn't going together. Be on the same page this offseason about how you want to approach this defensive line and really go for it in free agency and the draft.
As we continue our focus on the D-line, Laiatu Latu, still a breakout candidate or a Jag? Not a Jacksonville Jaguar, but just a guy. We'll get into that when it comes to one of the Colts' most polarizing players next when the Colts Squad Show returns. This portion of the Colts Squad Show brought to you by Gusto. Let's be real. Nobody starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in, to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without hassle and without hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. And knowing you can reach certified HR experts anytime gives you real peace of mind. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/lockedonnfl and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/lockedonnfl. LOCKEDONNFL. One more time, that's gusto.com/lockedonnfl. And past the halfway point here of the Tuesday edition of Locked On Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for joining us. Zach Hicks, Jake Arthur from Locked On Colts, Alan Pinkett, former NFL running back, and me, Derek Schultz. Happy to have you aboard as we look at our year in review defensive line position for the Colts, and just talked about some changes ahead for 2026. But we do know that Laiatu Latu is going to be a part of the Colts here moving forward for another year, heading into year 3. And Zach, I think you had mentioned on the last show that we did that generally speaking, year 3 is kind of like the breakout year, particularly for edge guys. And so, there's some people that are holding out hope for Laiatu Latu, and there are some, and I can understand this mentality, even though I think this is more, this is less about Latu and more just about this era of heavy draft capital, pass rushers just not living up to the hype. So I can understand why a lot of Colts fans are just defaulting to the feeling that, okay, he hasn't shown us anything that much yet. He's just a guy. I can understand where those folks are coming from. But what say you when it comes to just kind of individually? We'll go around the room as well, because I kind of want to get everybody's take here. What do you still see for Laiatu Latu? Is he still that high-end splash, keep you up at night type player? And by keep you up at night, I mean opposing offensive coordinators, like in a good way, keep you up at night? Or is he just, the latest to kind of flame out from the edge position where the Colts have invested so heavily over these last couple of years?
I think he's kind of in the middle right now. Yeah. And I think that there is still that step he can take to being the guy the Colts drafted him to be. I'm just in such a middle ground with him right now, where it's like, if you look at, and I've said this on the last couple shows, so I might sound repetitive here, but like, if you just take away all film and you just put the analytical profile of, hey, this guy was taken in round 1, first year, adequate player, decent pass rush win rate, got a little bit better as the season went along, but overall kind of an average player, only a handful of sacks. Like, it wasn't this flat, like super flashy rookie season, but it wasn't bad by any means. And then in year 2, increased the sack total to 8.5, increased the splash plays, got 3 interceptions on, like 2 of them were like outstanding football plays. The Kansas City interception was like a 1-of-1 football play. The interception against the Miami Dolphins, like he was legitimately just in coverage on that play. Like, these are game-changing type plays that he was making. And you see the pass rush win rate get closer and closer to where you want it to be. I think Pro Football Focus, he was like a top 30 in pass rush win rate. Brandon Thorne's high pressure percentage, he was like top 25 on the season in that. Like, these are good steps forward, very good steps forward. The question is, can he take one more step? It's about one more step forward, and it's, can he start beating offensive tackles at a more consistent level in true pass sets? Because we know right now, He is a splash player. He takes the football away. He can create tackles for a loss. He kills tight ends in the passing game, kills running backs in the passing game. And, he can work his way to some sacks, but can he cleanly beat offensive tackles in one-on-one situations? That's the question. It's very hit or miss right now. I don't think he's much of a threat right now to top offensive tackles when they're out there. I think he's just a guy to those guys, but he is certainly a threat on the field. But can he be a threat to everyone is the big question for him going forward. So, as of right now, I don't think he is fully lived up to the 15th overall pick, but I think there is this runway for one more step next season, and it really comes down to how he approaches the offseason, how he comes into camp, and how ready he is for that step, because all the ingredients are there. We just got to put them together to make this perfect cake that we're trying to make right now. He's so close. He is so close, and I want to believe in the analytical profile so much. It's just the film isn't fully backing it up for me, so I'm not quite there yet, but I'm certainly not out on him as a player. I think there is something there. It's just, can we get over this one last hurdle to get to where we need to be?
I think what I'm seeing from Latu is I saw a big jump in comfort level from year 1 to year 2. So when you look at his UCLA film, I thought he was indisputably the best pass rusher in the draft coming out of UCLA. He had the neck injury that affected his draft stock, what have you. But the pass rushing was, bar none, it was the best to me. You didn't quite see a lot of that as a rookie. And of course, he wasn't even really starting. He didn't play a ton as a rookie. But then he's a starter. He's playing a lot in year 2. And I saw the comfort and confidence that it takes to make some of these rare plays. I saw that light switch come on, not just as a pass rusher, but you saw it in the way that he attacked plays that were going to the outside on run plays. I felt like he was right there to stop a lot of runs or on screens. I thought he did really, really well there. And then, of course, the interceptions, like the guy was in the right place a lot. Like, I don't think it was a fluke. Now, he's not going to go out and get 2 or 3 interceptions every year. He may not even get 1 most years. But the fact that he was able to create those plays for 3 of them this year, 2 of them, which he truly took the ball away. One of them he was in the right place, right time. But he made some really special plays. Now, as a pass rusher, I think the fact that he still does need to get stronger is something. And he has kind of talked about he needs to get better plans against specific blockers. And so, like, that's going to come along in film study and things like that. But he needs to learn the tendencies and how to counter some of these best offensive tackles that are really stonewalling him, because he is going out there and just trashing running backs and tight ends. Like, if you're trying to chip Latu with an extra blocker, he's going to eat you alive. But like Zach said, he's got to do that. Maybe not even do that, but just like win against tackles at a higher rate. And then we'll start seeing those numbers climb to where he's getting the 10 sacks and things like that. But I'm really, really encouraged about where he is going as a player. I kind of view him like on the Alec Pierce level. I started to see the confidence come on, and he was making those rare plays that you saw from them as a collegiate player, because both of those guys kind of came on slow when they got to the NFL. But as their confidence grew, you started to see the splash plays more often. And so I think Latu is definitely, the arrow is still up on him.
Well, I didn't play defense, so I can't talk about what you do on defense, but I can reference from my own personal experience the difference between year 1, year 2, and year 3. And I feel like personally, I made major growth in year 3, just learning the game, learning about the players you play against, being able to study better, being able to have seen a couple players for 2 years and now know what to expect the 3rd year that you play. Not only just physically getting better, because now you understand the rigors of playing in the NFL. You know that you need to be just as strong in week 16 as you were in week 2. You know, just the lifestyle that you have, you're just better equipped in your 3rd year than you are in years 1 and 2. And so what I see from Latu is he's ascending, he's having that growth, and I think that next year the game will have slowed down enough for him to where he can start to make an impact. Because in your first 2 years, you're sort of fishing around, and you're rushing with everything that you do. But when I mean rushing, I mean speeding up your thought process and everything. And by year 3, you gain a few more smarts about the game. You can anticipate stuff a little bit better. So I look forward to him taking that step in year 3, just from the progression you make as a pro going from year 2 to year 3. You just know so much more in year 3 than you did in year 2, and it reflects in your play. Also, you're getting near the peak of your strength. You're a lot stronger in year 3 and year 1, because you understand the guys you're playing against and what areas you're deficient in. And so you improve those areas so that you can go and make plays. And also by year 3, you learn how to watch film so that you can not only know how to go against the player in front of you, but also critique yourself and know what works and doesn't work. So it could be, I anticipate, a breakout year for Latu.
Yeah, and I want to give Alan his flowers here, because I went back and looked, and I think they used to keep these statistics on stone tablets. But in year 3, 1988, career high in rushing yards and touchdowns for year 3 compared to years 1 and year 2. Okay. So you really did come into your element there, that the 1988 Oilers and Alan Pinkett. But yeah, something else about Latu too, and I love that you said, Jake, that you feel like if your comp is Alec Pierce, then that's going to encourage everybody that's listening, right? Because even if it's slow, it's better late than never, right? And so if it does eventually click for Latu like it did for Pierce, I think that would be great. But, something positive that I kind of harken back to, one big red flag when they drafted Latu was the fact that this was a guy that had to medically retire at one point in college. Yeah. And yet that his health hasn't really been an issue much at all. He's 33 games, right? I mean, that's been kind of a footnote as far as what's happened through his first 2 years here. But I wonder how much of it too, guys, is just, we want these guys to just come in and just be game wreckers and just dominate themselves. And if you look at when the Colts have been really great with their edge rushers, yes, Robert Mathis had some great individual seasons, but a lot of that was Freeney and Mathis, right? And two guys kind of feeding off each other. Or you see that with other NFL teams where, look at what's happening with Hunter and Anderson with Houston, where it's just almost like they feed off of each other. And if you get somebody else in here, I'm not saying like another all-pro or somebody like that, but if you get somebody else in here that can do their job on the other edge and do it better than, say, what Kwity Paye has done certainly this year, then I think that Latu could kind of feed off of that as well. So I think it's, a cumulative thing as much as it is an individual thing. Yes, Latu needs to get better as an individual, but the Colts need to do better about supporting him and making it more of a sum of its parts type pass rush too.
Yeah, I agree to a degree with that. My one kind of pushback was I don't really think that his struggles have been because he's getting chipped too much or because he's getting double teamed out there. I think a lot of it is just he's not winning his one-on-ones against tackles very well. Fair. And he's getting good depth in the pocket. He's getting those pass rush wins, but is he pressuring the quarterback? Is he getting the quarterback on the ground against offensive tackles? And that's where we haven't really seen that big jump from him yet. But again, as you guys have mentioned, year 3 is such a big year for edge rushers. He has the analytic profile that says year 3 should be good for him. I'm slightly concerned with his age because he did come into the league at a bit older than most pass rushers. So his year 3 is probably a little different than some other year 3s because I think he's 26 now already. He's about to be 27, I think, by going into next season. So he is a little bit older. But yeah, I'm certainly not out on Laiatu Latu. I think there is that step. There is that room for growth. It's just, can he hit that ground running next year? And can he take advantage of this upcoming offseason to get stronger, get more powerful, and become a player that, the Trent Williams of the world, the Laramie Tunsil's of the world are looking at on film like, oh, that's our guy that we have to take advantage, or we have to really account for. That's become a threat to offensive tackles this next season. And I think that's when he can take that next step.
One other thing I'll throw in there is coaching helps too.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I had the best running back coaches, because what can a running back coach in the NFL really teach you if they didn't play the position? I had more lackeys at running back coach than I can imagine. But, in this case, I wonder who is going to be coaching him, because didn't Charlie Partridge go to Notre Dame?
Notre Dame.
To help out that defensive line. So hoping he can get a coach in here that can really unlock the potential that he has.
Some individual Colts are getting, or they are up for some accolades. And are you guys ready to brush up on your Canadian Football League knowledge? We'll dive into Colts news and notes to wrap up the squad show next. This portion of the Colts Squad Show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, every single one, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. How about those road dogs, Houston and Buffalo especially? Maybe there's some individual props that you like in there too. Open that profit boost pack first thing on game day. See what boost you want to apply to the wagers that you already want to make. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every single NFL playoff game day this postseason. And we're back for a final time here on the Locked On Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for making us a part of your midweek rotation alongside Zach Hicks, Jake Arthur. You know them from Locked On Colts. It's your first listen every day. You know Alan Pinkett, especially if you're a Notre Dame football fan, left Notre Dame as the all-time leading rusher in that program's illustrious history. Also had a great career as a Houston Oiler, as a running back in the NFL too. And I'm Derek Schultz. As we're going to do kind of with the Tuesday shows when we get into the offseason, there is some news that sort of sprinkles in. And I just figured, hey, let's just make it a catch-all. Like we're not going to do a full segment on, John Bullock being claimed off waivers from Tampa Bay, right? That's not worth 15 minutes, but is it worth 30 seconds? Yeah, probably. So just some news and notes here as we kind of bullet through. Quentin Nelson named a second-team All-Pro. He's earned either first or second-team All-Pro honors in 6 of his 8 seasons. He's also been a Pro Bowler in all 8 seasons. Jake, I don't think that's any surprise. I mean, you can pretty much seemingly write him in for that every single year.
Yeah, absolutely. And he even had a couple down years, like about the middle, maybe about year 4 or so, because of some back issues. But even still, he was better than most other guards. Like the standard for him is so much different. And I mean, we can't say it about a lot of guys, but we're watching a Hall of Fame career right now. It's nice to see.
Yeah, and talk about the standard being different. I think that's also the case, Alan, for Jonathan Taylor, where he was nominated for FedEx Ground Player of the Year, and while he led the NFL in total touchdowns with 20 and rushing touchdowns with 18, I think folks were a little bit disappointed by the way he closed the season, right? Where he actually ended up 3rd in the NFL in rushing, but still, you look at it, I mean, almost 1,600 yards, 20 touchdowns for this dude. He had 5 games where he had 3 or more. Still an incredible season for Jonathan Taylor, whether or not he wins the FedEx Ground Player of the Year award.
Well, the amount of yards is amazing to me because, week in, week out, he's toting that rock and he's getting hit. I wonder how he feels on Wednesday and Thursday. I know near the end of my career, I didn't feel right until Friday, and that's because I got a massage. I did get it from a dude, so no Deshaun Watson references. Because I didn't feel right until Friday, but at that particular position, a full-time back usually is good for about 6 years. And this was his 6th year and maybe his best year. I mean, I only see him improving. Really impressed with what he was able to do. And I think that the system also helps too, because the number of times they threw on first down, you did have the defense on their heels a lot of times, but there's no doubting the talent that JT had. Just watching little things he did that impressed me. When he did get in the open field, some of the little things he did to, exaggerate the number of yards he would ultimately get. His fighting for the extra yard, was something that always impressed me. The only problem with fighting for that extra yard a lot of times, though, is somebody's going to go and reach for the ball. And he did fumble once, trying to extend that extra effort. And what happens in a situation like that? You just, as soon as you feel somebody touch the ball, just go down right away.
Yep.
But really appreciate it was a treat for me to watch him run and have the success he did. But I think I'm not saying it's all system, because he definitely has talent.
We did see some personnel moves as well. This is reserve and future contract season. So a lot of even, our diehards, names that you guys probably have never heard of, signed with the Colts, including a couple of CFLers as well. Devin Verasuk, I hope I'm saying his name right, former second overall pick in the CFL draft. Joseph Vaughn as well, who was with the Colts in Westfield last summer, is also back. But I did find it interesting, Zach, they're trying to fill out the rest of the linebacker depth chart. And remember, like Cam McGrone, and they had a couple of others that were in there that didn't last very long. But John Bullock was mostly a special teams player with Tampa Bay, but he did appear in 15 games and had double digits in tackles, and also Austin Ajake as well, a 1-year extension for him. So, I mean, we're talking about the very back end of the linebacker depth chart, but two guys that'll, I think, have a chance to win a job once again in camp.
Look, guys, we're getting younger and faster on this defense right now. Verasuk coming. Look, Verasuk, guys, look, and not to show just that I'm a nerd when it comes to all football here. I believe he was the CFL Rookie of the Year this past year after going second overall, and had a really good season with, I'm just going to guess something Tigers, because that's all the CFL names.
Yeah, Hamilton Tigers. Tiger Cats.
Right.
It's always Tiger something or Bayfish or something up there. I don't know. Moose Tigers, I don't know, is what they are. But he had a really good season in the CFL. Hopefully that can parlay into a good training camp, and maybe he could be a special teamer next season. They also signed a corner from the CFL as well. A player that was, I can't remember his name right now, but he was known for his athleticism in college. He had a really famous ESPN clip where he goes up and one-hands it, spinning up in the air. Just getting some younger players in here. We'll see if they turn into anything. I remember last year, some people were sending me all these messages like, they signed Aju from the CFL. And I'm like, look, guys, I hope this guy works out. He has a great name. If your first name and your last name are the same name, I want you to find success in the NFL. That's great for marketing. But he ultimately didn't really do much in camp. So we'll see if any of these guys do anything. I mean, the special teamer from Tampa appears to be someone that could be in like a Shea Gualubi type role next year. But just get some more younger, faster guys in here. I actually like the shot on the CFL linebacker. Look, second overall pick in the CFL draft, Rookie of the Year up there. Like, hey, maybe look, maybe you can be a special
Darrell
team.
Freeman, right?
Yeah,
When
I'm not trying to.
I was
back in the day.
I was gonna say,
yeah, I'm not counting on this guy to come in here and start. I'm just saying, if you can get on a practice squad from where he's starting off, that's successful for him. So we'll see what he can do. I know Jake will fall in love with him in training camp. Jake always finds some bottom of the roster white linebacker to fall in love with.
Derek just said it. Jarrell Freeman is my guiding light here. Take me back to 2012. Jarrell Freeman, coming out of nowhere, coming out of Canada, becomes a 100+ tackle guy for the Colts, one of their best defensive players. So I have high expectations for Verasuk now.
Yeah, pound for pound, maybe Ryan Grigson's best signing, right? Jarrell Freeman, as far at least a diamond in the rough, certainly he was during that era. But as far as the reserve future contracts, a lot of other names that you guys will recognize. Seth Hennigan at quarterback, Coleman Owen, who I know, Zach, you were a big fan of. Tim Smith, who, Alan, you mentioned earlier in the show, part of that reserve contract as well. And then if we're talking all-name team, Ulysses Bentley IV, who had a nice offseason and a nice preseason last year, and I think has some talent and maybe worth giving another look to.
Of the seven.
I'll throw in, I'm not mad at him for getting guys from Canada. Makes sense, because in terms of the passing game, they're more suited to defend against the passing game. So, that's a good pick. And I think I probably played with the greatest player to play in the Canadian Football League. Spent 6 years there. I think won 6 Grey Cups. So I'm not mad at all about him getting players from Canada. I don't know why they wouldn't get more from Canada, because the Canadian Football League is definitely a step up from college, playing against college. So yeah, why couldn't that be a good training ground for guys coming to the NFL?
Yeah,
That's
for
crazy.
sure.
I didn't know that Allen played with Chad Kelly. That's wild.
Oh, he's talking
God.
Doug Flutie up there is what he's talking about. No, but
Yeah.
I think the biggest NFL, like the biggest news though, and maybe it's not particularly Colts news, Derek, but like just news is this coaching cycle where a lot of people were saying if you want to fire a head coach right now, there's not many good assistants around the league for you to go to. You have to go to maybe like Shula up there in with the Rams or Halfley with the Packers. Like it's not the greatest assistant coach market. All of a sudden, these like super long tenured coaches who were never ever going to get fired, all those jobs are open. And it doesn't look like Mike Tomlin's going to be going for a head coaching job this year, but John Harbaugh is the belle of the ball. Mike McDaniel's the second belle of the ball. Kevin Stefanski's the third belle of the ball right now. And there's 9 coaching jobs open. This is a third of the NFL, second most in NFL history for one offseason. 10 is the record. 9 coaching jobs open. So the Colts elected to bow out of that. And I know I've seen a lot of Colts fans saying like, man, if we would have fired, we could have got John Harbaugh. We could have convinced Mike Tomlin. I'm fine with it still, like whatever with Steichen being the head coach, but it is an interesting thing that's developing this offseason where, heck, we got 9 coaching jobs open across the league, and guys like Harbaugh, Stefanski, Mike McDaniel, and Mike Tomlin are all out there looking for new jobs.
Yeah.
Juliana Rumo interviewing with the Titans last week and Giants today, I think, or earlier this week.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting about the head coaching stuff is that, obviously Tomlin and Harbaugh, this fits, but even guys like Stefanski and McDaniel, at least like there is proof of concept to point to where when things were good, they were good. For in both of their tenures, particularly Stefanski, wasn't he a 2-time coach of the year, I think, in both of those seasons. So I think there is some upside to unlock there. But yeah, the Ravens one really surprised me. The Steelers one made sense because it's just time. Pittsburgh is in a spot where they're just above where the Colts are, but it's also a very frustrating place to be for a legacy franchise like that, to be just good enough to make the playoffs, not good enough to actually do anything. And, I thought even pound for pound, and I know the Panthers were involved in the playoffs this year. I thought Pittsburgh might have been the worst team in the postseason. They were lucky to be in there just period because of the division and all that. But yeah, it was time for them, 10 years without a playoff win. And I think it was time for them to move on. I think it's time for both parties to move on. And if I were Tomlin, I'd just go get a cushy TV job somewhere, man. Screw the dealing with the nonsense. The message
Tomlin's still fairly young, though, because he was hired so young, wasn't he? Yeah. So he's still not even that old of a coach. But I think an interesting thing I guess if we want to go around with this, because I'm curious, like say next offseason the Colts fire Shane Steichen and say Harbaugh and Tomlin both take a year off. I've seen a lot of Colts fans clamoring like one of those guys could be the ball coach that we need. For me personally, I think both of those guys, their messages have got a little stale over the time. And I think that they gained so much control with those organizations that they were so involved with roster creation that you can't really have a coach that involved in that stuff. And it doesn't really lead well unless you have Tom Brady at quarterback, I guess. Bill Belichick is the one example where it worked. So I think a lot of the pitfalls with those two teams were because of those coaches. So I'm curious, like, yes, I think at the end of the day, they give you such a high floor, but what's the ceiling with those two coaches is my fear. And my fear is, like you said, Derek, if you hire a Tomlin, right? Say you're any other team or the Colts, right? Hire Tomlin. Maybe it gets you over the hump to being an 8-9 playoff team or a 9-8 playoff team or a 10-7 playoff team. Are you winning the Super Bowl with those guys putting Jonnu Smith out there for 70 snaps at 30-something years old who's not very good just because that's the way that you like to coach? I'm curious to see if their messaging has kind of staled and the NFL has passed them a little bit. And I'm curious, like, again, like where they land, like what their next job looks like.
Interesting that you say that, because one of the things I've noticed is that the head coaches in college were getting older, but head coaches in the NFL were getting younger. And I think it's because in college, it's a dictatorship that coach controls everything. But in the NFL, it's a partnership. In fact, you don't even call the coach by the name coach. You call him by his first name because usually you're making more money than he is. So it's definitely the player directing the coach in the NFL. And if you can, have that personality to be a partner with them and still be the man in charge, you usually have success.
Yeah, I'm happy with Shane Steichen as a head coach, but I do think that he lacks some of the CEO type stuff that Harbaugh or Tomlin would bring to the table just because they've been around it for so long and running that operation. Like, Shane is still a little bit awkward in front of the media and sometimes by either what he says or he doesn't say, kind of gets himself in trouble and paints himself into a corner. And I think with those guys, what you would get with them, like you said, Zach, is sort of the higher floor, but also more control over the CEO type stuff. But I still, and I know some Colts fans are going to hate this, and people listening to the show are going to be like, "What's Schultz even talking about here?" I still think Steichen is a gifted offensive mind who can be a very successful play caller and successful NFL head coach, even if he lacks in some of those other areas. So I'm cool with the Colts decision, what they made there. General manager is a different thing for me. Head coach, I'm kind of cool with, though. But that's our Colts Squad show for this Tuesday. Thanks so much for joining us. We're still your go-to place for Colts offseason coverage. And it's never truly the offseason right here on the Locked On Colts Network. We're going to try this Tuesday, Thursday cadence here moving forward. So we'll next see you Thursday night at 9 p.m. So keep it locked in. And again, Tuesday night at 9 p.m. And we'll kind of keep that thing going. As always, keep it locked on Jake and Zach the rest of the week on Locked On Colts. Be sure to follow at Locked On Colts on socials and check out our other great content on YouTube and TikTok. And we'll see you next time right here on the Squad Show.